What the hell? Put your hands behind your back.
It is April 20th, 2018, the 19th anniversary of Columbine, a date that puts every school resource officer in America on high alert. At Forest High School in Ocala, Florida, the morning routine is shattered at exactly 8:39 a.m. by a sound that no one ever wants to hear in a hallway, a shotgun blast. The shooter, 19-year-old former student Sky Bouche, has just fired a 16-gauge Winchester pump-action shotgun through a locked classroom door, striking a 17-year-old student in the ankle. This is the moment where training meets reality, and the difference between a tragedy and a massacre is measured in seconds. Enter Deputy James Jimmy Long of the Marion County Sheriff's Office. As the code red blares over the intercom, the footage begins with a chaotic rush. Unlike the hesitation seen in other high-profile incidents like Uvalde or Parkland, Officer Long does not wait for backup. He does not wait for a SWAT team. He moves immediately toward the sound of the threat. The body camera audio captures the visceral intensity of the situation as Long navigates the confusing layout of the school, his breathing heavy, his weapon drawn. He receives intel that the shooter is in a specific classroom, but the situation is fluid. The adrenaline is palpable. As Long approaches the area, he spots the suspect. Bouche has discarded the shotgun and is wearing a tactical vest, sitting in a chair in what appears to be a library or computer lab area. This is a critical psychological moment. The shooter is not actively firing, but he is wearing tactical gear, and his hands are not fully visible or compliant initially. Long's reaction is raw and unfiltered. "What the hell?" he screams, a human reaction breaking through the police procedural. He immediately transitions to verbal commands, ordering Bouche to put his hands behind his back. The suspect, seemingly resigned to his fate, is seated, but Long takes no chances. In a split-second decision that would be scrutinized by armchair tacticians later, Long deploys his taser. The prongs hit Bouche, locking up his muscles and ensuring he cannot reach for a concealed secondary weapon or a detonator, a valid fear given the tactical vest. The suspect crashes to the floor. Long moves in, cuffing him efficiently while simultaneously scanning the room for other threats. "Everyone out," he commands, clearing the innocent students from the kill zone. The footage is a masterclass in solo active shooter response, aggressive closing of distance, immediate neutralization of the threat, and rapid scene control. This wasn't just an arrest, it was a stoppage. Bouche had a backpack full of ammunition and a knife and the will to cause harm, yet the entire engagement from the first shot to handcuffs took less than 3 minutes. This rapid response stands in stark contrast to the failures seen elsewhere, and it sets the stage for a complex legal and financial aftermath that we will explore next. The visuals of a lone officer charging into the unknown effectively ended a potential mass casualty event. But as the dust settles, the questions begin. Was the taser necessary on a seated suspect? What legal protections does an officer have in this split second? And how does the system weigh the life of a shooter against the safety of the public? These are the questions that define modern policing. The arrest of Sky Bouche provides a textbook example of the legal concept of objective reasonableness established in the Supreme Court case Graham versus Connor. Critics might look at the freeze frame of a seated man being tased and cry excessive force, but the law looks at the totality of the circumstances from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene, not with the 20/20 vision of hindsight. Officer Long was responding to an active shooter call. He found a subject wearing a tactical vest, a garment often used to carry extra magazines, explosives, or to stop police bullets. The shotgun was not immediately in the suspect's hands, but it was nearby, and Long had no way of knowing if Bouche had a handgun in his waistband or a dead man's switch for an explosive device in his hand. The decision to use a less lethal option, like a taser, rather than lethal force, actually demonstrates significant restraint. Had Long shot Bouche with his service pistol, the legal argument for justification would still have been strong given the active shooter context. By using the taser, Long effectively bridged the gap between a verbal command and physical control without risking the suspect's life, despite the suspect having just attempted to murder students. Legally, this holds up under the Fourth Amendment scrutiny. The courts have consistently ruled that officers do not have to wait until a gun is pointed at them to use force, especially in an active shooter scenario where the threat to the public is imminent and catastrophic. Following the arrest, the legal system moved with a weight that reflected the severity of the crime. Sky Bouche was charged with terrorism, aggravated assault with a firearm, carrying a concealed firearm, and possession of a firearm on school property. His defense team attempted to argue mental health issues, citing his history of depression and the fact that he apologized immediately after the shooting. However, the judicial system prioritizes accountability. In 2021, Bouche pleaded no contest to the charges. The judge, recognizing the terror inflicted on the student body and the physical injury to the victim, Evan Eckenroth, sentenced Bouche to 30 years in prison. This sentence serves as a deterrent and a statement that the mental state of a shooter does not absolve them of the terror they cause. Furthermore, the victim, Eckenroth, filed a civil lawsuit against the Marion County School Board, seeking damages for negligence in security. This is where the legal reality shifts to financial liability. While the criminal court punished the shooter, the civil court looked for deep pockets. The lawsuit alleged that the school failed to prevent Bouche from entering the campus with a guitar case containing a shotgun. These civil suits are where the true cost of school safety failures is calculated, often running into the millions. However, Officer Long's actions likely saved the county tens of millions of dollars by preventing further loss of life. In the eyes of the law, he is a hero who acted within the scope of his duty, protected by qualified immunity, because his actions were not only reasonable but necessary. This incident highlights the precarious balance law enforcement walks. A split-second hesitation can lead to a massacre and a billion-dollar lawsuit, while a split-second overreaction can lead to prison for the officer. Long walked that line perfectly. We arrive at the most critical analysis for your financial future: the pension versus portfolio dynamic. When we look at Officer Jimmy Long, we see a public servant who, by successfully stopping a mass shooter, secured not just the safety of the school, but his own financial destiny. Police officers typically operate under a defined benefit plan, a pension. If Officer Long retires after 20 or 25 years of service, he is guaranteed a percentage of his salary for the rest of his life, indexed for inflation. This is an asset worth millions. To generate a risk-free income of $60,000 a year without a pension, you would need a personal portfolio of roughly $1.5 million invested in the market, assuming a safe withdrawal rate of 4%. That is the power of the pension side of the equation. But here is the risk that most people don't understand. Liability. Let's look at the numbers. In the Parkland shooting, which happened just 2 months prior to this incident, the FBI agreed to pay a $127.5 million settlement to the families because they failed to act on tips. The sheer scale of that payout is staggering. If Officer Long had hesitated, or if he had been found liable for excessive force, the financial burden on the county could have been catastrophic. But as private citizens, we don't have the luxury of sovereign immunity or a government-backed pension. We live in the portfolio world, a defined contribution environment, 401k, IRA, real estate. Your wealth is entirely dependent on market performance and, crucially, your protection from liability. Just as the school district faced a lawsuit from the victim, Evan Eckenroth, you face risks every day that can wipe out your portfolio. A car accident, a tenant lawsuit on your rental property, or a professional error can be your personal active shooter event financially. The lesson from this video is twofold. First, the value of decisive action. Officer Long protected the community's assets and lives by acting without hesitation. In your financial life, this means hedging against black swan events. Are you carrying enough umbrella insurance? If you own real estate, is it held in an LLC to segregate liability? Or is it in your personal name where a lawsuit could target your life savings? Second, we must look at the stability of the asset class. The officer's pension is like a bond, steady, low risk, guaranteed. The average American's portfolio is like the stock market, volatile, high growth, but high risk. To recreate the safety of a police pension, you cannot rely solely on the S&P 500. You need income-generating assets that are detached from your time, like rental real estate or dividend-paying stocks, that mimic the monthly payout of a pension. The stark reality is that while Officer Long faced a physical threat, he has a financial safety net that 90% of Americans do not. He can retire in his 40s or 50s with a guaranteed check. For you to achieve that same pension status with your portfolio, you need to accumulate significant assets and aggressively defend them against liability. The $127 million Parkland settlement proves that when security fails, the cost is astronomical.